clock to the second, and we're very pleased to be here tonight to welcome all of you citizens and all 11 candidates for mayor and city council positions whose names will be on the ballot, or at least some of the names will be on the different ballots in the different wards of the city. I'm Bill Witt, your moderator. We have a very tight schedule tonight. As I said, we have 11 individuals. We will have an opening statement from each of 2 minutes. We will have questions from the audience. They must be written, and I will read them. And then finally, I get to pose the last question for people to think about. And so my question for the end is, what is the most crucial problem facing Cedar Falls, and what leadership abilities and insights can you bring helping Cedar Falls resolve that problem? But now let's begin with the opening statements, and by a very scientific method of flipping coins, determine the order. We'll go by positions, but then within that, there's a randomly selected order for each. So first, from our 3 mayoral candidates, I'd ask Jim Skane to begin. Mr. Skane, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Bill. When Rosemary Keller Skane moved to Cedar Falls with our family in 1965, one of the first things that she did was join the League of Women Voters. She had been in the league before we moved to Cedar Falls, and so she wanted to continue as a member. Over the years, Rosemary was voter service chair and president of the league. As I watched her serve in the league, I learned from her. Rosemary was an advocate for people as a group and people as an individual. She was a sociologist and was always interested in groups that struggled for equality. Over the years, she wrote more than a dozen scholarly books about the role of women in society. While she advocated for the rights of groups, she embraced the individual. Jane Tieford, Diane Grant, and some of you who are here tonight became lifelong friends. Others that she met along the way, she encouraged to be productive and to excel. She inspired others to write. Rosemary was a remarkable scholar and a remarkable human being. Rosemary passed in March of 2017, but her legacy lives on. I learned from her. I learned the importance of working for people in society, for the rights of individuals, and for solutions that improve the human condition. Because of what she taught me, I am here tonight as a candidate for mayor of Cedar Falls.
Thank you, Mr. Skane. Mr. Brown.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening. My name is Jim Brown, mayor of the great city of Cedar Falls the past 4 years. It's been an honor to serve in this capacity. I'm married to Corrine, who teaches at Cedar Heights Elementary School here in town. We have 2 daughters. One went to the Cedar Falls School District. She is now a sophomore at Ames. And we also have Annie, who also now attends Cedar Falls High School. She's a junior. I served on the Cedar Falls School Board for 6 years prior to becoming mayor. Been involved with business development in my career. About 10 years ago, was one of the founders of a test development software company that we took from 0 clients to ultimately acquired by the largest testing company in the world. I believe my track record speaks for itself. Cedar Falls is the envy of Iowa towards economic development, quality of life, low taxes, low debt, a balanced budget, and a high valuation of property value per capita. That is evidenced throughout the community as we go throughout the community. I'm proud of the communications put forward by me and staff towards all that's going on in the community. I've done over 40 mayor's corners explaining exactly what the city does for its citizens. And I take pride in my leadership, ranging from professional meetings, conducting city business, to the flood of 2016. I'm asking for your vote as I continue with these qualities while continuing more efforts towards the high-tech sector to increase our sustainable growth throughout our great city. I'll end with this short note. It looks like my opponent got what he desired in stating publicly he didn't want this League of Women Voters Forum to be at City Hall. I only say that because Channel 15, I don't believe, will be able to broadcast this because they were not available for this forum. Thank you very much.
And Mr. Green.
My name is Rob Green. I'm running for a 2-year term as mayor. I've been in technology and teaching for about 15 years now and a decade in the Coast Guard before that. I owned my own company for 7 years and now I'm at UNI as a web developer. My wife Jocelyn is a novelist and is in lesson 2 of our ballroom dance class at the rec center tonight. I'm a little jealous. We have 2 kids, aged 13 and 11, and 3 cats. I'm thankful for a wide variety of experiences I've had, particularly now as a creator, mentor, and teacher at UNI. It's a fantastic place to work. So why would I leave what I love to serve as mayor? It comes down to civic responsibility and my belief that if you have constructive ideas and the ability and opportunity to carry them out, then you have a clear duty to act, and that's why I'm running. When I was elected to City Council 2 years ago, I did so with a set of principles and a desire to be a good steward of the government that's carried out in your name. My decision to run for mayor wasn't an easy one. Like many of you, I voted for Mayor Brown in 2015 and again in 2017. But during my past 2 years on City Council, I found that I have profound and fundamental disagreements with Mayor Brown on the conduct and oversight of government. Based on my observations and those of others, it's clear that change is needed in City Hall, and I look forward to explaining why tonight. I'll also note for the audience, it's a common practice for candidates to be forewarned by supporters about questions they'll submit to the moderators. So if one of us seems particularly polished, just know it's quite possible that candidate had time to prepare in advance for the answer. I was told an hour ago about one potential question, and if it comes up, I'll let you know. And with that, I'm eager for tonight's debate to begin. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Green. All right, now we're going to start shuffling a bit, so just stay as focused as you can. Let us start with the Ward 4 council candidates, and we'll begin with Tom Blanford. Mr. Blanford.
Thank you, Bill. Good evening. My name is Tom Blanford. I would like to thank the League of Women Voters, our moderators, and our timekeeper for their efforts tonight. These events are an important opportunity for residents to engage on local issues and learn more about the city. As the 4th generation of my family to live in Cedar Falls, I am proud of this community and all that we have achieved together. From our award-winning downtown to our record-setting economic growth and our partnership with UNI, Cedar Falls is a vibrant and growing community. Over the past 4 years, we have worked together to lower the city's property tax rate, attract new businesses, provide opportunities for our students, and invested in the future of our community. I look forward to taking your questions and sharing our vision for the future of Cedar Falls. Thank you.
And next from Ward 4, Fred Perry.
Hello, my name is Fred Perryman. Very excited to be here. Very excited that so many people showed up for this. It's really important to me when a lot of people engage in local politics. A lot of times people spend so much time focusing on national or state races and forget the races that matter to you more on a day-to-day basis. And that's what we're here for. We're here to talk about our ideas and how it's going to affect you on a day-to-day basis. I have a daughter that lives with me. She's 10 years old. And I've got a 20-year-old daughter who's expecting her first child, so I'm going to be a grandpa soon. So funny to head around that one. So I have a vested vision and interest in our future. I'm not looking for short-term, easy fixes. I'm looking for not just what I want to see and to help me and people that are around me. I've got a daughter. I've got a granddaughter. I'm concerned about making sure that we live in the city 20 years from now. What's it going to look like? So when we look at any of the things that are coming, that's the kind of vision I want to bring. Not short-term fixes. Not what can we do right now. So how is this going to look at 20 years from now? Very proud to be part of this. And when I look around, I see the whole community, but at the same time I see individuals. When it comes down to it, I'm I'm really concerned about everybody's individual rights and how you can live your life with as little interference as possible. I'll hope to get into a lot of those ideas later. Just really glad to be here and glad you're all here as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Simon Harding. Mr. Harding.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate the League of Women Voters. Thank you all for coming. My name is Simon Harding, and I play the saxophone and the flute. I moved here 2.5 years ago because a job opened up at a saxophone shop in Waterloo called Tenor Magnus. When my wife and I came out here to look at the area, we absolutely fell in love with Cedar Falls. Great schools, great people, progressive utility services. We absolutely loved the neighborhoods we looked at, so it was a no-brainer. We had to move to Cedar Falls. I first got into politics over the concern of the PSO platform and the direction it was going. But after attending quite a few meetings, I actually saw that there's a bigger issue that we need to address in Cedar Falls, and that is citizen government relations. We need to work with policy transparency and implementation, the way the government has dialogues with the citizens, and make sure that we have healthy and responsible development by focusing into the city, and not necessarily just always looking out. All of these things can be fixed very simply by listening and talking. That's why I've made the core of my campaign listen before I represent, so that together we can make change. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, sir. All right, now from Ward 2, let's hear from Susan DeBoer. Mrs. DeBoer.
Thank you for hosting this debate. I am Susan DeBoer, your Ward 2 Council Rep. I am married to Dave DeBoer. We own and operate Color Glow International, and we specialize in velour, vinyl, and leather repair. We just completed our 28th year in business here in Cedar Falls. We have 2 sons, Neil and Nick, who have settled both here in Cedar Falls with their families. Neil got his doctoral in chiropractic and soon will be opening up his chiropractic clinic on Viking Road. Nick works at Mud Advertising. We have 3 grandchildren, all under the age of 4. My parents inspired us to serve our communities. My brother was a career firefighter and also a firefighter for the Air National Guard. He's now retired from both. I have a sister who's a teacher, a sister who's a nurse, and a sister who's an entrepreneur. Our parents donated land to the Woodbury County Canine Corps for the purpose of training police dogs. That's what inspired me to study criminology, and I was hired by the Department of Public Safety, where I was stationed at Post 9, but I was stationed actually in Iowa Falls. I love Cedar Falls, and I love doing the accident reconstruction work, and that prompted me to take a position with State Farm Insurance as a property and casualty claim adjuster. When our office closed in 2004, rather than transfer to Lincoln, Nebraska, we chose to stay in this great community of Cedar Falls to raise our sons. To give back to this fine community, I decided to run for public office. I would like to continue to serve you. I believe people need a representative that always puts the people first and that feels that people are the priority. I do feel that the youth are our most valuable asset and our key to the future, and I'll do everything I can to inspire our youth to stay and live and prosper in our community.
Thank you, Mrs. DeBoer. And by the way, I thank everyone. You've all stayed under 2 minutes, which is great. Let's keep up the good work here. And last from Council, Ward 2 Council candidates is Derek Rogers.
Thank you to everyone for coming out. Thank you for your time. My name is Derek Rogers. I'm actually from Cedar Falls, born and raised. I have 2 daughters. One's 6, her name's Chloe, and the other one is 12. Her name is Cameron. I even have a small little dog. And so this is the city that I love. I have no reason to leave. I have a small business doing advertising and signs. I used to do advertising for Mud Advertising as well for a long time. So this is a great place to live and grow a business. The initial reason why I ran for city council, what inspired me, was a PSO program, and I want to ensure that the fire department has highly specialized, lower cost firefighters. Obviously have the police assist, but not replace. And for me, the PSO program is where it starts, but not where it ends. For me, there's other issues that I want to talk about tonight, and I believe entrepreneurship is important. I want to meet with business owners downtown, talk about growth plans, as well as ease congestion with parking, particularly Main Street, College Hill District, and specifically my ward has issues pertaining to Quickstar Fairway and the Green Hill Townhome additions. These are just a few of my key issues I will work on when elected as your Cedar Falls City Council member for Ward 2.
Thank you very much. And now back to community-wide, our at-large council candidates. Let's begin. Let's see with Dave Sayers, please.
Thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this evening. I'm Dave Sayers. I'm a third-generation lifelong resident of Cedar Falls. Third-generation lifelong resident of Cedar Falls. My wife and I raised our 3 children here, and we actually met right down here at Lincoln School on the very first day of kindergarten. And I always say that was my very best day, and she always says that was her very worst day. I own and operate several family businesses. I love Cedar Falls. I have served my community by volunteering, and now I want to give back by serving you as your council member at large. I'm Dave Sayers, and I'm asking for your vote on November 5th.
Thank you. And next, let's hear from, where's my list? Okay, let's hear from Nate Edier.
You hear me? All right. Well, thank you, Bill, and to the League of Women Voters and all in attendance for coming and sharing some of your evening with us tonight. My name is Nate Edier, and I'm running for the at-large seat. I've lived in Cedar Falls for 11 years. I came up here in 2000 to go to UNI, where I graduated with a BA in history. I spent 8 years in the U.S. Army, the Iowa Army National Guard as an infantryman, and my time in my service was one of the greatest honors of my entire life, and it's where I've really built up my passion for helping others and was formed during those years. I first deployed to Kosovo for a year, where I saw that country gain its independence, so it's a very awesome historical event to have been part of. And I also deployed to Afghanistan for a year, where I ran an intelligence cell made up of multi-branch service members. I worked here in Cedar Falls at Target Distribution for 14 years. I helped open both the food side and the dry side, and I helped set up distribution centers in New York, Ohio, and Texas as well. Currently, I'm a production supervisor at Omega Cabinets. I have an incredible team that helps continue to help me grow personally and professionally every single day. I'm married to my wife, April. We celebrated our 10-year anniversary Thursday of last week, and to get a little bit out of the norm, we took her down to hurling hatchets and threw some axes all night. So something very different. It was a lot of fun. Check it out if you get a chance. We also have 2 children, Reagan and Colton, that go up to Lincoln Elementary as well too. So I've learned so much this campaign. It's been an awesome experience, and I just look forward to a very interesting discussion tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. As you might say in Afghanistan, Ashapur. And last but certainly not least, Dick Tiber.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks, everyone in the audience. Thanks, everyone in the interweb, too. My name is Nick Tiber. I'm running for City Council at large. I lead corporate development for process equipment manufacturer here in town. I lead strategy and acquisitions. You've probably seen my 2 sons, Roman and Julian, riding around on bikes, following our laws. I like to think of myself as a community builder. My mother called Cedar Falls home, actually, and then we took a brief pause. I grew up in Waverly, and in fact, the grass really is greener in Cedar Falls, and that's why we came back and enjoy living here so much. Our city is truly a leader, not just in the state, but in the nation, and I'm super excited about that. I am concerned about the issues that we have in our city, but I'm even more excited about the potential for our future. Cedar Falls is an untapped city of potential. There are certain attributes that you need to look for in a council candidate. One is teamwork, the willingness to work together, to find compromise, enable leadership, and work toward ambitious goals. Communication ability, those that actually reach out and do proactive communication through blogs or vlogs, Twitter, whatever the choice is, but those that can actually connect with you and take feedback. Analytical skills, that's the ability to really analyze some very complex decisions that have the potential to impact the future of our city for decades to come. Leadership, obviously. But most importantly, you need to have a vision for the future, and it goes way beyond a single issue. Today, Cedar Falls enjoys the 4th lowest city tax rate. We have the lowest debt in the state. Crime has been down. It's down 25% over 10 years, and our quality of life is the envy of all. So I'm here tonight to appeal for your vote. Thank you very much. My name is Nick Tiber. Let's have a debate.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all. Again, you were all admirably precise and punctual, and let's see if we can maintain that standard of performance. Our first question from the audience, and again, I'll remind you, if you have a question, please take the paper, write it down on the paper, and one of the folks from the league will pick that up and bring it to me. And please, no applause or any form of response. Let the speakers give their answers in turn, and take it from there. So, okay, on the top of the list, parking ramp by or near Main Street. Do you support the construction of one, and what would be your plan for its use? And let us start. Let's just work our way back here a little bit. Nick Tiber.
One of the last acts on City Council, by the way, I didn't mention this. I did serve on City Council for 8 years. That's probably notable. I'm proud of our accomplishments. But one of my last acts was actually passing the parking study. So the good news is Cedar Falls is now implementing lower cost solutions to get more parking density in the downtown. You've seen it already on State Street. We've opened up private parking in certain parking lots, off-street parking lots. Ordinances have changed to encourage greater parking turnover. So we're doing a great job. At what point does it necessitate a parking garage? I don't think we're quite there yet. First of all, I want everyone to experience the level of parking availability today, because to bite off a parking ramp, it's going to be close to about $12,000 to $15,000 per parking space. Okay, somebody pays for that. It's either the taxpayer or else the district. When the density requires it, then I think we look at it. But right now, I think we should look at lower cost solutions and evaluate and monitor the situation as it unfolds.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Sires.
I believe that should have been looked into long ago. I believe that a lot of the things should have been planned out much before this time. To ask the taxpayers to pay for a parking ramp in an overdeveloped area is just not fair. Now, if you wanted to use a little bit of government TIF money to offset that parking and have it done by private business, that would be fine. But to ask the city to pay for a parking ramp, we should have had better foresight than to all of a sudden come up with the need for a parking ramp. It would be very expensive, and I believe this $15,000 estimate is quite low.
Let's go ahead.
It's Thank you. I agree with Dave. I think this is something that should have been looked at long ago. I will say the city's done a lot to look into bettering the parking issue in Main Street. I know this past summer they even ran some shuttles to help bring people to and from, just to as another item to see if it would work. One of the issues that I've seen, though, however, speaking with local business owners, is that it's costly to be down on Main Street. It's a very coveted area, and they need to be able to have their customers coming to them and have that turnover regularly. Where it becomes difficult, as it is Iowa, and our winter months get pretty crazy sometimes, and that really takes away a lot of opportunity for families and certain groups to make it down to Main Street, go to the shopping that they want to do, enjoy the food that we have on Main Street. So I would be in favor of a parking ramp. I think it's going to be a very large project, and we make sure that we are looking at all aspects of it to make a well-crafted decision, but I would be in favor of it.
Okay, thank you very much. And we'll just keep working our way backwards here. So if I've got this right, Mrs. DeBoer, let's hear from you next.
Well, I'm extremely financially conservative, so I try to look at all low-cost alternatives first. We just completed a parking study, both downtown and in the College Hill area, and we're just starting to implement some of those recommendations on that parking study. I think we need to do those recommendations, embrace the new technology that comes with that, listen to the feedback from the businesses and from the citizens, and find out if those changes are working and if we need to do more. One thing that was interesting about the UNI parking study that was done was that the UNI parking ramp was underutilized. So I think we really want to look at every option we have, embrace these new options that we're going to do with the parking study before we jump headfirst into a parking ramp.
Okay, and then Mr. Rogers.
So I think it's going to take a combination of different ideas. Aesthetically, being from Cedar Falls and the looks of downtown Main Street, I'm more concerned about how it's going to fit in with the rest of the buildings. And I think it's going to take a combination of, the rezoning of the parking study, possible parking meters, and I also want to address different the new developments in the area, especially Main Street, with the developers who have commercial on the main level and then residential above. Looking at those ordinances and providing more parking spaces when developers come to town and develop in those highly traffic areas. So I guess at the end, I would say I would be for it as long as it makes sense, and all other alternatives have been looked at.
Okay, thank you. And so then we'll move to our Ward 4 candidates. And let's start with Mr. Harding.
I've been walking around a lot during this election, and I've been talking to residents. I've been knocking, and I've heard over and over that parking is a concern for people down there. So I fully support more parking down there, but it has to check all the boxes. Where's the money going to come from, and is it a fiscally responsible decision? Do the people want it, and where is the location going to be? But the bigger issue is we really need to look at these ordinances for developers. We need to see commercial versus residential. We need to see if, as we grow in density, these are truly accurate numbers. We shouldn't be in this situation where we don't have this parking. And to get out of this situation, we can build more, but we need to address the future, and that would be making sure the ordinances will support the capacity.
Thank you. And so then we'll go to Mr. Perry.
The parking situation is obviously a struggle for a lot of people. I've been out talking to people as well, and people say, I can't walk that far. Or I can't. What about when it's the weather? It's just too cold to do that. There's been a lot of different alternative solutions. I really do like the shuttle idea. Granted, I live on College Street, where the shuttle comes relatively frequently on weekends and does that. I'd like to see that expanded. Trying to just build a parking garage at this point in time is just, where would you put it? Are you going to level the building? There's not a real efficient space to do it. Even if you build one, you're still going to end up having to walk. And then that doesn't even cover the cost aspect. At the same time, I'm not a real big fan of the parking meters either. I've been in Waterloo, and I've put in my coins, and I'm going to go get something to eat, and it took me 15 minutes longer to get my food than I thought it was going to be, and then I ended up so I would prefer that we look more at different solutions, specifically shuttles, until we get to a point where the entire downtown area is expanded enough to get one that would fit in more of a centralized position. Again, if you're going to be parking and then at a parking garage, you're still walking 10 blocks. It's the same issue that you had when you were already parking 10 blocks.
And finally, from our council candidates, Mr. Harding. Oh, Mr. Blanford, I'm sorry.
Thank you. I agree with some of the comments mentioned. I think we may get to a point where a parking ramp is required, but there's some real factors that have to be considered. As was mentioned, it is incredibly expensive to construct them. That's why you've seen other cities in Iowa City, Cedar Rapids, Des Moines, get away from publicly constructed parking ramps because they're so expensive not only to build but to maintain. The other thing I think we have to keep in mind is both downtown and College Hill, that's some of the most valuable real estate we have in town. So is using it for a parking ramp the most efficient process? I think one of the best options that we can consider is doing a public-private partnership where you see a developer come in and work with a public entity to create a parking ramp that has commercial facilities on the bottom. So the front part of it is a commercial building, and then the parking ramp runs up the back. It's both more aesthetically pleasing for the neighborhoods and also better use of your space. I think that would be a much better option than just creating a parking ramp. And then also, as was mentioned, we did just complete 2 parking studies, both downtown and on College Hill. And we're implementing some of those solutions now. We just added dozens of new spots downtown. We're using our space more efficiently. Some of the new technology we'll be implementing will be the new pay stations that you can use mobile apps, you can use cards. So if you're at lunch and you find, hey, I'm taking a little bit longer, I'm running short on time, you'll be able to access it with your phone, add some time, and really shorten that walking distance for yourself. So I think there are some very viable solutions. We just have to be very cognizant of what are we investing in and what's our long-term return.
Thank you. And Mr. Brown.
Thank you. When the parking consultant came first to town and I had my first meeting with him, I indicated that we have some parking available over here at Viking Pump. It's just not advertised well enough that you can utilize that lot from after 5 o'clock and beyond. I remember very distinctly when he indicated that if you get Viking Pump parking, you don't have a parking problem downtown. That was his words to me. So I took a very focused initiative the next 3 or 4 months with Viking Pump. The CEO of Viking Pump initially was at IDEX up in Canada. He switched gears and he left. A new Viking Pump CEO came first of this year. And amazingly, after about 7 or 8 months, being able to sit down and actually go through an agreement with Viking Pump took about 2 weeks. That opened up roughly 72 spots, about a half a block from South and Main. The Cedar Falls Police Department, as you know, moved down to South Main, and that alone, on one side of that building, freed up about 32 spots. That's about a block and a half from Main. And then also the different design on State Street, the parking consultant came through and council approved. That opened up about 17 spots. So in all, my numbers may not be exactly right, over 100 new parking spots were created downtown just with those ideas and those sorts of efforts. Now it's a matter of working with Carol and the community Main Street to get the word out. Here's what we have, the signage and all those sorts of things. We are in conversations right now with a partnership, a couple different companies looking to come in and do that private development along Washington Street. And there's where we might look at a cost sharing between building those developments, having a parking ramp in the middle, a cost sharing event where the company actually leases out the spots during the day and opens it up during the evening. And again, the city can help cover some of the costs because of that development does create TIF dollars. It's a natural development from the additional development we get from those kind of companies that have an equal opportunity to come in and spend their capital in Cedar Falls.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. And now let's hear from Mr. Skane.
I think that we need more than one parking space that is constructed. We have the parking lot. But it would be spread, there'd be a number of them that would be spread throughout the downtown area. Where parking is already there. And in that particular case, we build it up one story. We don't have to have a structure over top, which has a place for the cars to park and down below. So I think that you have to have more than one, and you have to have low cost structures that will accommodate. And I really appreciate the notion of not having to walk 5 or 6 blocks. And that would be the problem if we have a single ramp and the notion of where to put it. But my solution is you have as many as you need downtown when you raise a structure that's 1 story up and not covered.
Thank you, Mr. Skane. And Mr. Green.
I'd support a public ramp as a public-private partnership. It also should have a wraparound structure around it so that, as Mr. Blanford mentioned, it would not appear as a parking ramp from the street. It would have retail available, help partly to offset the cost and to make it a public-private venture, but also for the aesthetics as well. And I think that's going to be a necessity in order to make it fit in with the character of the town.
Thank you. Let's move on. I'm just going to kind of shuffle through. Getting a lot of questions. I thank you for all of that interest. Okay. We have a question. How do you justify Cedar Falls spending over twice as much for a full-time mayor and city administrator as our neighboring city Waterloo, which has a greater population? So I think we need to look at so let's start with our Ward 2 candidates, and then we'll start with Mr. Rogers.
You'd ask us what question exactly?
The question is, it's essentially, how do you justify Cedar Falls spending twice as much for a full-time mayor and a full-time city administrator as Waterloo does, part-time mayor? And you don't have to justify it. You could say you don't. But, I mean, the question is, I guess we could say, should Cedar Falls continue to have a full-time mayor and a full-time city administrator?
So the research that I've done is I've looked at the different salaries of mayors across Iowa, and from what I do know is that it's number 2 in the state of Iowa. But right now we're paying 90 grand, around 90 grand for a full-time mayor for Cedar Falls. Sioux City, I think, is number 1 in Iowa, and they're paying around a little bit more, but they don't have the same costs incurred for a city administrator, but we currently have both, so we're paying 90 plus the city administrator 150. I don't know exactly what the right solution is for that. I do support a part-time mayor, as what Rob Green has suggested. So that's my stance on that particular topic at this point in time.
Okay, thank you. And then Mrs. DeBoer.
We had a wonderful city administrator. He just wasn't called city administrator under Dick McAllister for several years. He did all the work of the city administrator, but wasn't actually called that until we reorganized. When he retired, Ron Gaines moved into that position. A few years ago, there was at goal setting, we discussed whether to have a full-time or part-time mayor. And I talked to a lot of the citizens and got a lot of impact from citizens and found that the majority of citizens throughout Cedar Falls enjoyed having a full-time mayor and wanted to keep a full-time mayor. So I've been an advocate to keep our full-time mayor. We do not save much money by going to a part-time, and he's of a lot more benefit to us with the work that he does with senators, with congressmen, with grant writing, with the work that he does. It's showing up to all the different events that the citizens have asked him to go to. So I support having both.
Thank you. All right, and so now let us go to the council members at large, and we'll start with Mr. Tyler.
Incidentally, I served under 2 mayors, Mayor Cruz and Mayor Brown, and in both cases, I led an effort to make the position part-time. So that's kind of where I am on it. But then, as I think about it, the citizens really have a referendum every 2 years to decide whether or not the mayor's doing their job. Based on the code alone, I would say that it doesn't justify a full-time position. The mayor's managing meetings and doing other procedural duties. However, if you look at what the mayor actually does, they're charged with economic development. They're charged with lobbying efforts with our congressmen and state legislators. They're actually building bridges to communities. So it's the citizens that actually evaluate the mayor and whether or not that person is fulfilling the duties for the salary that's taken. So I support the part-time mayor, but I also recognize that it's up to the citizens to decide whether or not we're going to elect the mayor on the basis of activities and accomplishments made.
Thank you. Mr. Sires.
The most important thing we have is the ability to vote our elected officials in or out of office. To have a full-time mayor is very important. What we maybe need to do is reduce the pay of his assistant. We need top people in there. The assistant can help the mayor and know all those little ins and outs, and that's fine. But truly, when you give away a full-time mayor's position, you have less control over your city. You've turned it over to someone who is not elected. And that's the fundamental thing that we always have to worry about. We have to have elected officials looking over us.
And Mr. Didier.
I would agree with a lot of different aspects of what people said. Based on the financials alone, it doesn't, I would say, justify with the amount of salary there is between the two. But not to take away the mayor position, and like many have said, what that role does, not just at a community level, but at a state level as well too. I am potentially for a part-time mayor. I think a lot depends on what that is going to be expected of that role. But to the point of losing the ability to vote out a mayor and not have that ability with the city administrator, we could still have expectations, performances, and stuff like that put in place that if that particular individual is not doing the job that they are supposed to, then it is up to the council to vote that person out of office.
Okay, let's see if I'm tracking my scorekeeping right. We now move to the mayoral candidates themselves, and let's start with Mr. Green.
Sure. So my concern with full-time versus part-time mayor isn't so much with the salary itself, but with the ability to attract candidates to be in the position, aside from those who are independently wealthy or retired or unemployed. And so what I would love to see with a part-time mayor status, regardless of the number of hours that are used for it and what that salary amount is a broader array of people with different talents that they can bring to the table for the city. Right now, we don't have that opportunity. There's 2 people or 3 people running for mayor right now. Imagine what the pool of candidates could be if it wasn't a full-time responsibility. I can think of 10 people easily that I would love to see run for mayor who would do a terrific job, but they can't because they have full-time employment. So that's the model being used in other cities, and it's something that works in those communities. And I'm not going to say for certain that I would want to eliminate. I would need to know for the responsibilities required if it is practical. But I do believe it's worth pursuing, and I would certainly view that as mayor, seeking in that second year of my term, after a year of experience, to be able to say whether or not it's practical to do it or not, with the belief that it can be and the intent to try.
Thank you. And Mr. Brown.
Thank you. When this came up a couple years ago, we did our own research towards other communities that had a part-time mayor and a full-time city manager or that person in charge. For the cities that had a part-time mayor, the average salary was roughly $25,000, but a city manager was roughly $250,000. As was pointed out earlier, the position now for mayor in Cedar Falls is about $92,000, and because of a shared type of responsibility, the city administrator position here in Cedar Falls is about $185,000. So there is no savings towards the cost in terms of the salary is concerned. What I've learned is the work wouldn't go away. More for less does not work in this circumstance. I'm a part of roughly informally or formally 40 boards and commissions from Cedar Falls, Waterloo, the county, the state, and at the national level. Which one of those commissions and boards does a part-time mayor not go to? And I'll end it with this. We have an amazing city of 30, 40 years of full-time mayor, lots of councils, a couple of great mayors as well. I look at how well our city is doing, and I just ask the fundamental question, why would we mess with the very foundation of our form of government?
Thank you. And Mr. Skane.
It was mentioned that the people should have the right to vote for their elected officials. And that should have happened in 2014 when there was an effort to establish the city administrator. Now, you can change the form of government in Iowa from what it was, mayor council, to a manager council form. But you've got to do 2 things. You've got to have a petition. You have to have an election where the people decide which form of government. As a result, that didn't happen. So for 5 years, we've been operating illegally. Now, fortunately, in June, that was called to the attention of the city council, and 2824, the city administrator had processed was ruled null and void. So we have only a mayor. Now the mayor is entitled to an assistant, and that's maybe where James has gone from being city administrator to be administrative services director. But the point is, we need an elected mayor full-time to respond to the people, which is total majority.
Thank you. And let's see, if I'm following my scorebook, we now hear from the Ward 4 council candidates. So let's begin then. Let's see. Let's start with Mr. Perryman.
Now, this is a great question. The way that I look at politics and running for office and campaigning is that this is a service. I believe that we should, any elected official should be a part-time position. It shouldn't be a career. I understand there's a lot of work to be involved in it. But to me, it's more important if you have somebody that does this because it matters to them, not that it's because they're career, that you end up doing this for a long time, this being your primary source of income. You can still serve the community and do so without making it need to be a full-time job.
Thank you. And then Mr. Blanford.
I am not in favor of changing the mayor to part-time. I think I don't look at it so much as what works in other communities, I look at what works in this community. I think the residents in Cedar Falls expect a full-time mayor. I think whether it's attending graduation ceremonies, ribbon cuttings, representing the city at the state and county level, I think the citizens expect that level of time commitment. I think a very useful example, for years, the city was trying to get the Army Corps of Engineers to approve our levy to help protect our town, and it was just dragging on and on. We weren't getting anywhere. And so a meeting was set up with the Federal Department of Transportation, and it wasn't making a lot of progress. And then when the mayor was introduced, the tone in the room changed dramatically. There is a very real impact, both at the state and federal level, of having an elected official come in and make a statement versus a staff person. You are not going to get that with somebody who's working 8 or 10 hours a week as a mayor. It's just not possible. That person does not have the time to take on those activities. So I think it's essential that our community has a full-time mayor. I think we've seen the benefit of that for decades. And I really don't see any value in changing that. I don't see any return on that kind of investment.
Okay, and Mr. Hardy.
Thank you. There are viable arguments to both sides, having only a full-time mayor and then having a part-time mayor and a full-time city administrator. I personally feel that the power should always be with the people, an elected official. Therefore, I'm fully in support of a full-time mayor. It's a great figurehead, it's a powerful position, it's someone that leads our community, and it's someone that we, as a community and as citizens, have the power to vote in or vote out. But that being said, it's absolutely frivolous spending to pay both a city administrator, what we do, and a mayor. So we need to sit down and look at the situation and see what's the best for Cedar Falls. Keep the mayor. Do we need the city administrator? Maybe we do, maybe we don't. But definitely we don't need to pay what we pay for both, regardless of what other cities pay. $185,000 and roughly $90,000. That's a lot of money. We can save some money.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on to another question. So, just been looking into the question of full-time mayor. How about looking a little more closely? This questioner asks, you have the surveillance cameras that were installed on College Hill. Have they been effective? If so, would you support additional surveillance in other areas of the city, like Main Street? All right, and going back to my scorecard, let's see. So we'll want to move to. Okay, we'll start with the fourth ward. All right, so Mr. Perryman.
I am adamantly against increasing surveillance. I believe every citizen in every business, in every area has a right to privacy. There is no reason for 24-hour police surveillance. When you look at where they put them, when I looked at the neighborhood survey of what's the safest areas in Cedar Falls, the third and fourth safest ones according to that neighborhood survey were actually the UNI area and 18th at that area. So they're not even the quote unquote most dangerous areas of town, and that's where we're putting the cameras. I essentially have one basically in my front yard. I am not happy with that, and I don't think if I ask any individual, would you like a camera in your front yard, or would you like a camera, a police camera in front of your work? They go people. I've never heard somebody that I've talked to going up and down in my ward, especially in the street that I live, say, "Yeah, this is great. Let's have more police surveillance." So I am just adamant against that. It's a privacy issue that is completely unnecessary to continue to do so, much less expanding in other areas. Additionally, I don't see how it actually helps deter crime. I've talked to business owners. If they felt that they needed a security camera, they'd install one. And if they did, it'd be of higher quality than the ones that the cities are putting up. So I don't see a benefit to continuing to do it. I don't see how it's helped deter any crime. The biggest issue is it's not a dangerous area to be.
Thank you. And so let us now hear from Mr. Harding.
I don't actually have the stats to tell you if they're effective or not. I would need to see some reports to see if they're actually truly effective. That being said, I'm not in favor of putting up more cameras and surveillance. I go to the Hill, I go to the Octopus, I play saxophone, I play jazz there sometimes. I go and listen to my friends play jazz there. I quite enjoy the Hill. I shop at the Mohair Pear. I've been there late at night, I've been there during the day. I personally have not encountered anything dangerous there, but if there truly is danger there and we truly need to do something about it, then the cameras are not the answer. The answer is to beef up the protection and make sure that there is preventative measures to keep that from happening. So if we beef up the protection and we put more of a police presence there, then effectively what we can hope is that people will get word, don't go there, more police there, and then they'll find somewhere else to go. Then we end up with a safer area overall.
Thank you. And Mr. Bland.
Thank you. I do support the city's recent installation of our new security cameras, both on College Hill and downtown. This was a long-running effort we've just recently completed where we've installed several high-quality cameras. These are in public areas. They're not surveilling people in their private homes. They're all on public streets and public sidewalks. They are not the only solution. They're part of a multi-pronged solution to keep our community safe. So they're working in conjunction with multiple law enforcement agencies, partnering with the businesses, and they have proven to be effective. As someone who's spent their life in the financial industry, I'm fine with having cameras. I think they do increase safety and act as a deterrent. As a UNI student, you knew there were cameras on College Hill, and I think it does provide an additional safety benefit. And it's relatively cost effective. We're very fortunate because of CFU. We're able to run fiber optic lines to these cameras, which allows us to have a higher resolution camera than you would see elsewhere in other communities. And I think we've seen the benefit of that here recently.
Okay, let's see. More questions coming in. So let's see. Let me see if I'm tracking. So you just help me with this, folks. We've got, this is our fifth question, and so now it comes to the mayor. Okay, the mayoral candidates. So again, the question concern surveillance cameras. Have those installed in College Hill been effective? And would you support additional surveillance in other areas of the city? And so, Mr. Brown, you can start.
I'd be happy to start. Have they been effective on the Hill? I do believe they have been, and do we need additional ones? I believe downtown is in play, and I believe those would be beneficial as well.
Thank you. And Mr. Green?
It's a tricky question because it's hard to say how much crime didn't happen. So, looking at the recent incident, the fights that have broken out on College Hill, the cameras were effective in helping to identify who the perpetrators were and to have them arrested. So, I support surveillance in public spaces. Part of that comes from my background with the Department of Homeland Security. I see the value nationwide of cameras. I don't believe they should be in residential areas, but in public spots where there's not a inherent expectation of privacy, I believe it's acceptable. And I would like to see small placards that say this area is under surveillance, just so that the public can know that that's the case.
Mr. Skane?
I think they're an overreaction. I don't think they're necessary. We had a little bit of trouble at the beginning of the school year. We've not had any since. In fact, Mayor Brown said that homecoming, there was not a single incident they had. No problem at all. I think that the idea of needing cameras, it reminds me of 1984. The war book. We don't need that much surveillance. We do need to have good police force that is on the lookout for difficulty. But, it's an overreaction.
Thank you. And so then we'll go from mayoral candidates to our members at large. And start with Mr. Saunders. And the question concerns surveillance cameras.
I believe that cameras are reactive, not proactive. We need to have a tough presence on College Hill and everywhere else in town. We need a tough police force. I think we need to have a drug sniffing dog, and I'm willing to pay for that dog, and I've also already had the training ready to go for that dog. When they say Cedar Falls made arrests on the College Hill incidences, Cedar Falls actually made no arrests. Waterloo made the arrest, and Dunkerton made one arrest. They've taken these cameras and used them instead of good police work. When things get out of control, you can always have cameras. There were 34 police officers on duty on homecoming, so that's why there was absolutely no problems. We need to have the good old-fashioned foot patrols, and we need to have a relationship with the College Hill Neighborhood Association and the business groups up there so that we can get the police officers up there and take care of these issues as they come up, not be reactive to something that has happened. We want it to be safe in this town, not only on College Hill, but everywhere.
Okay, Mr. Tiber.
I don't think there's any disputing that the cameras help bring certain people to justice. So their effectiveness is hard to argue. They're also cost effective today. I can remember a time when we had the paint can incident in the downtown where the resolution wasn't good enough and they caused thousands of dollars of damage. Those cameras are now high tech. But here's the caveat. I want to know what the government's looking at too. And so what that means is it's kind of like CCTV in the UK. If you've ever been to London, watch Channel 15 there, and it can be kind of humorous. You know exactly what they're looking at, okay? And that's your right. And that means that it's not hidden. It's well in public view. And actually, you have many thousands of eyes now looking at the camera footage, and may be able to bring perpetrators to justice in faster. Because if you have 1,000 cameras and you only have one person in the control room, it's kind of hard to monitor all the cameras except half of the time. So Cameras are okay. Public spaces only. The public has a right to know.
Thank you. And then Mr. Okay, Mr. Didier.
There is a fine line between the need for surveillance and individual rights and privacy. We do live in a time where we have technology available that helps potentially solve crimes, and that's something I think is very important. In Cedar Falls, we are blessed to have a very low crime rate. I think that's one of the things that makes us kind of the jewel of Iowa. But with that being said, I don't believe that it's something that deters crime. However, if I'm a victim of a crime, I want to know that in a public space that there's potential that assailants or the criminals that conducted those crimes have a greater chance of being brought to justice. So again, like someone said, I think it is very important as an intel analyst overseas. I took part in a lot of surveillance, and it does bring the question on who is on the other side of the camera. What are they saying? What do they take home with them? What do they share with other people? That kind of stuff. So again, transparency, like Nick had said, it can be very important in that situation. But I do support cameras in public places.
Okay, thank you. And then finally, our Ward 2 council candidates. So let's have Mr. Rogers begin, please.
I think it really just comes down to the cost of the cameras. And if it actually does deter crime, then I'm for it. And I have a sign company, so if you guys need signs to put up, I can definitely help you there. But that being said, I do think that the College Hill incident was somewhat isolated, and obviously that comes down to the aesthetics and how we're going to just keep adding things to Main Street areas, that kind of thing. And if we've never really been safer before, the number of PSOs plus the deputy sheriffs on the weekend should probably cover our safety needs for those concerns.
Thank you. And Mrs. DeBoer.
Hi, yes, I think they are an effective tool that help us fight crime. They are in public places, and they are a great benefit in helping us to identify the bad guys. As many of you know, my son was a victim. He was assaulted by a gang at a school in Waterloo, and I certainly would have greatly appreciated if there would have been cameras to help identify his assailants.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so I think we're now in the bottom of the fifth inning, and the home team is batted, and the home team's coming to bat again. This is a little more abstract, but by way of explanation, all local and county governments have to submit their budgets and their revenues to the state treasury, and then the legislature votes to return the money back to the cities. And this questioner asks, what can we do when they don't return all of the money we've collected to us? All right, and so let us begin with our mayoral candidates. And Mr. Brown, let's start with you.
I'm not sure where the question's coming from. I know we do, as a local community, we do submit our budget. I'll go a little bit into that. Our budgeting process in Cedar Falls is transparent. It's upfront. In fact, we'll start it in about 2 weeks here with our annual goal setting, which will move and then progress to our CIP, which is our future 5-year planning as far as spending is concerned. Council have all the opportunities to talk with staff and to each other as far as what they see in the CIP. And then from there, there's multiple meetings up through having to certify our budget March 15th. And all the iterations in between there in terms of what the budget and what is being planned for in the future. I'm not sure what they meant as far as sending our dollars to the state gives it back. I'm assuming there's laws in place they can't keep money they are not supposed to keep. We do have instances in the last 5 or 6 years with the backfill from the tax breaks that the House or that Des Moines passed a few years back, and that backfill was supposed to help those dollars lost, if you will, during this tax break. The interesting thing about Cedar Falls, and this is from those that came before me, is that each year that backfill comes from Des Moines. It's roughly about $600,000. And Cedar Falls has never placed those dollars into our operating budget. We don't buy vehicles with it. We don't fix a street with it. It goes into various funds, one-time funds. In fact, for about 5 or 6 years, that $600,000 went into a fund that ultimately helped us build a new public safety building without increasing taxes. We set those dollars aside because we knew they were one time, because eventually, in my humble opinion, they probably will go away with the backfill. So those dollars coming from the state, again, I'm not exactly sure technically as far as legal aspects. I hope I gave a good explanation for that backfill and how good a shape our city is in for those dollars.
Thank you. I'll just interject and thank you because I think you explained it well in terms of the backfill and whether or not we get it. Okay, and so Mr. Green.
Yeah, so it's a rather technical question. I would only say that we're in a position where it's law and they're taking the funds. And all we can do is petition to our state legislators for change to the law. If we can't have it. There is an issue to the idea of home rule and the ability for states or for cities to define their own destiny. And much of that has been drawn away from cities, and that's a big concern with us, with our lobbyist in Des Moines, to return some of that control back into the cities where it belongs.
Thank you, Mr. Skane.
I just want to note, we have on this dais 4 members of the city council. One who was a member of the city council. I heard no one dispute my analysis that the city administrator has been wrong. They know there is no city administrator.
Mr. Skane, would you keep your answer germane to the question, please?
I will, but it is germane because the decisions about how our tax money comes. I mean, the $600,000. We had one business that was talked about at the last city council meeting that because of the agreement that they made with this economic developer, that economic developer is saving $600,000 over 5 years, but they don't have it. Okay? So $600,000 from the state as back bill is a small sum compared to what this council does each year in giving to economic developers millions of dollars. And then, of course, somebody has to pay for it, the people.
Okay, thank you. And so now let's move to the Ward 4 candidates. And we'll start with Mr. Blanford.
Thank you. I'm not sure if we're addressing the central part of the question. I'm not entirely clear on it, but the state legislature doesn't have approval over our budget. The cities do have to submit budgets both to the county and to the state treasurer's office. As it relates to the backfill, that is a huge concern, not just for Cedar Falls, but for all communities. It's $600,000 for Cedar Falls. It's a little over $1 million for the county and about $1.2 million for Waterloo. And that's a huge impact that would have on the Cedar Valley if that went away. That's why myself and one of my fellow council members who isn't here this evening spent a lot of time the past 2 years in Des Moines fighting for that backfill, fighting for the legislator to keep their word to the city. That will continue to be a fight I think we're going to have perennially. It's very important for all of our communities that we work together and try to protect that investment. In terms of the state not returning money that belongs to us, I'm not sure what that's referencing. But we are very fortunate to have a very talented public budget director here in Cedar Falls who has about 30 plus years of experience in public budgeting. She's been awarded numerous times at the state and national level for how diligent she is with our public budget, and I think that helps us keep very close track of our public investments.
Thank you. And then our next speaker will be Mr. Harding.
As a teacher, I quickly learned that I can't have expertise on everything. And I'll be fully willing to admit that I don't have that much knowledge about whether we give the money to the state legislature and if they give it back or if they don't give it back. I honestly don't know. But what I do know I can do is I can surround myself and go find the people who understand legislation and understand the laws and understand how you can get it if that situation arises. And I'll be perfectly capable to learn and work with those people to make sure we fight to get that money back if needed.
Thank you. And Mr. Perry.
Trying to make sure I understand the question. Still, it's kind of or because trying to figure out how to answer this.
I think we've had two kind of cuts at it, and I think they've both been helpful. And so one is when the state makes tax cuts that affect our current budget, how do we deal with that? And the second, when we have TIFs and other economic incentives where we essentially defer or give away immediate revenues to the city's bottom line. How do we deal with that? If I kind of characterize Mr. Speen's comment correctly. So that's what we're looking at here, and so your response.
Okay, if there's money that's owed to the city, then we need to do our due diligence to make sure that it comes back to the city. If it's an issue where everybody's taxes went down, so the anticipated revenue is as high as we thought it was, that's unfortunately something we're going to have to adjust to. I'm not going to say, hey, you know what, I'd rather us do is raise everybody's state taxes for the city. So I think that's what the question was, if I'm understanding it right. But yes, if there is money that is actually owed to us, then yes, we need to do everything we can to get it back.
Okay, thank you. And now we come to, okay, so we come next to our Ward 2 candidates. And let's start with Mr. Rogers.
The one takeaway that I've heard so far was Mayor Brown mentioning the PSO building, some of the tax dollars can go to benefit those kind of programs. And that's one of the issues that I've kind of been concerned with along from the very beginning is, you know, where do our tax dollars actually go, and do the citizens actually have a say in how much money we put into like the general fund, for example, or what we spend our money on, and where the buildings are actually placed in our city. And as your city council member, my goal will be just to be transparent, have open communication with everybody, and just, you know, go back and forth, have meetings with everybody as much as possible, and spend our tax dollars as wisely as we possibly can. So that's it.
Thank you. Mrs. DeBoer.
Generally, I believe this question refers to the backfill. And what we have done when we do our goal setting and planning is we just plan that they're not going to give it to us, and so we try to budget as if we're not going to get it. It was about 500,000. It's down to about 300,000 now. In the event that we did have, such as talking about other property tax revenues that were not received, we do have reserves to protect us if that were to happen.
Thank you. And finally, our council at large candidates. Yes. Okay. So let's start this time. We'll start with Mr. Sires.
If the money's not going to come back to us, we better be used to not having it. The thing that I'm always worried about is when monies do come back into our general fund, they're spent without any input from we, the citizens. And I have a real problem with that. The $12 million that was just spent on the PSO building was money that had come back to us, and what we truly need is priority spending. The money that we spent on that building, we could have had a safe street to the Aldrich School, and that's one thing that's really needed. We need to look at where our money is most needed and not put it up into one or two things that cost a tremendous amount of money when we could spread it around and make our city safer for everybody.
Thank you. And Mr. Tiber.
The backfill was a result of 2013 commercial property tax reform. The real irony of it is the commercial businesses received about a 10% break, but then it was backfilled by Iowa income taxpayers. By design, this is going away. It was about 600,000. As Susan mentioned, it's down to 300,000. So it's actually very prudent of the city to do our annual budgets without that in mind. It's going away. It's just a matter of time. With that, more importantly, what that triggered in 2014 was our budget reduction task force. We are well prepared to absorb that income loss, that revenue loss, and we implemented tremendous efficiencies and made new investments to actually lower the cost of government. So I'm really proud to be a part of that.
Thank you. Mr. Didier.
Again, it's not a topic that I'm fully versed in yet, but I'm sure kind of like they said, we can't really bank on money that we know may or may not be there. It's just fiscally irresponsible. What we need to do is ensure that we are doing our due diligence to protect that. It's budgeting, not basically not planning for that. But also, if there's anything going back and forth between the state, if there's mistakes that are made, clerical stuff like that, we need to ensure that any mistakes that do made that we learn from. If it's a mistake on the state's part, we need to ensure that we are appealing back that, because ultimately it is the residents' money, so that should be done back.
Okay, thank you. So that finishes that question. Let's okay, put your thinking caps on for this one. Questioner asks, a national report said recently that Waterloo Cedar Falls is the worst community for Black Americans. Waterloo is working on the problem, but Cedar Falls must have a greater problem, or there would be more people of color here. Do you support ban the box, such as Waterloo, or the Waterloo ordinance that is in the process of being passed, and mixed housing zoning in Cedar Falls to make us more welcoming? So again, I'll go through that again. It prefaces it with the problem about people of color and how few of them there are here. And so with Waterloo beginning to pass an ordinance banning the box, that refers to prior convictions. And second, and more mixed housing zoning in Cedar Falls to make us more welcoming. And so let's begin this one with our, okay, we'll start with our Ward 4 folks, and Mr. Blanford.
Thank you. I don't know if everyone has read the article that's being referenced there. That came out, I want to say, a year or so ago. Parts of it, I think, have been sort of disproven or debunked, but there are definitely some issues that need to be addressed. The City of Waterloo, the City of Cedar Falls, the county, Grove Cedar Valley are all partnering together currently. There is an already dedicated task force working with you and I to try to come up with viable and practical solutions, things that will actually have an impact. I think they've had 3 or 4 meetings up until this point. Both Mayor Brown and Mayor Hart have both been appointed as champions of that program. And I think we'll start to see some real results from that. In terms of the zoning and housing, we are in the process, or just getting started, I should say, with reevaluating our zoning codes. We haven't changed those since 1970. I would argue they're probably substantively out of date. So we're just starting to take a look at those and to look at what do we need to do to address our housing problem, which we absolutely do need to take care of, to make our housing more inclusive and to provide new opportunities for people. So that process is just kicking off. It's going to be extensive. I expect that to take probably at least 2 years to get through that zoning process. There'll be extensive public input from it because we want to make sure we're not just basing that on one segment of the community. It needs to apply equally to all segments of the community. So I encourage people to participate in that. You'll see a lot of public meetings coming out. I really, really encourage people to attend those because it's very hard for us to get diverse perspectives without residents coming to those meetings. So please do attend those.
Thank you. And let's go next to Mr. Hardy. Mr. Hardy.
It boils down to one thing: communication. Communication with our fellow citizens, communication reaching outside of our city. Rezoning, everything that's technical, yes, we're going to have to look at that and do that. But none of that's going to matter if we don't reach out to the African American community. We need to invite them in. We need to make sure that there's some sort of committee that we invite them to be a part of. We need to reach out and talk. It would be great to reach out to some African American groups to see what their thoughts are. Why are they not here? Why? Just why? Let's talk. It all has to go back to communication, sitting down, and making sure that we're on the same page.
Very large question, and it's going to be hard to get to. The article that was read written a year ago brought up several issues. One of them was the arrest rate percentages. But I believe it was 3 times for African Americans and minorities as a whole, or to be arrested and or convicted of victim. I would think the best way to handle that situation is stop pursuing it. Specifically, I've talked about this before, with decriminalization. That's one way that we can stop focusing on those two issues. The other issue is, again, happen to be unrelated and really bad publicity. So I've heard this when I've talked. I believe Ward 4 is one of the most diverse wards in the city. A lot of it has to do with the college. But I get to have those experiences that maybe not everybody else gets to do. And when you're looking at the perception of how we show these things, the security cameras, even if you believe they were a good idea, the one that we posted, the one that became public knowledge was the one of the African Americans who got into a street fight. It's turned into cited gang violence. Now everybody's terrified that there's African American gangs roaming the streets. None of that's even true. But that's the perception that we put out. We needed to have like an apology. There's more issues that we can go into that. But no, I believe that when we have a diverse area, that we need to be seeking out more diversity and getting those conversations. Unfortunately, I'm looking around right now. I don't think I even see an African American in school. That's really sad. So we need to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to participate in these conversations.
Thank you. All right, and then we'll go to our mayoral candidates, and let's start with Mr. Skate.
It was interesting that it was just said the fourth ward, which is the University of Northern Ireland, is the most diverse. I think that there's one group that has been doing work over the years has been the University of Northern Ireland. Unfortunately, the city prevents the University of Northern Ireland from broadcasting what's happening. Channel 19 used to be blue screen now. For years, you saw a camera focused on the Motley Union and people walking by. But for at least 4 years, we have not enabled you and I to reach out to the community. Now, as far as the process is concerned, there's another reason why we have fewer African Americans in Cedar Falls. It's expensive to live here. We're even having middle range young people with kids move out of the city because it is expensive to live here. They're touting the low tax rate. Yeah, low tax rate, but not for the average person because many of the services they pay extra through the Cedar Falls utility. And then, as far as fire safety is concerned, my homeowner's insurance has tripled in just about 5-6 years. So people can't afford it. And people moving out.
Thank you, Mr. Green.
So part of the question was about the Ban the Box initiative, and I would support that with the exception of maybe some very sensitive positions financially. That would have to be discussed, kind of what that would mean. But overall, I believe people deserve a second chance. The question or the aspect of how Cedar Falls fits into this, particularly for housing, I think is really important. I live in Sartori Park, which is about 7 blocks due west of here, and we have a variety of home styles and costs and price points. Some are rentals, some are homeowner, and I think that's terrific. And as we do go through this recodification effort, I know our consultants have started to get us thinking about the mindset of form-based zoning and not just carpet zoning an area to say this entire section of the city is all going to be single-family homes. Well, why does it necessarily have to be that way? Because you're stratifying your city by default. And I believe we need to get away from that style. And I hope that the discussion on council leads us into a view of seeing form-based zoning as an option in the city. That would include both renters and then potentially conversions of rental properties into homeowner occupied. Our original neighborhoods are fantastic for that opportunity, and I certainly support that as a way to give people who want to buy homes who don't have a lot of money, give them the chance to buy something that's fairly small, and then as they grow into that home, they can add on to it and build in wealth and value into their existing neighborhoods. So I'd love to talk for an hour on that.
But fortunately, we finished ahead of time. Mr. Brown.
In relation to the report, it's actually led to some very good meetings with myself, Mayor Hart, and other stakeholders within the Cedar Valley. 2 weeks ago, the Grow Cedar Valley hosted an inclusion summit that was very informative, both on the personal level and on the professional level. For the city, I'm constantly updated by various staff and the Human Rights Commission in particular. One example of what we have done, our public safety staff has hired double the number of underrepresented individuals the last 4 years. In fact, we now have 10 female public safety officers. Just last month, the police department went through some implicit bias training from an organization out of Drake University. I was told it was very informative, very good for those professionals as they work through the daily activities they work through. And for officers throughout the year, they're continually attending various workshops to inform our staff, again, on how to handle various situations. In terms of banning the box, you know, the devil is in those details. Waterloo is still working on those details. I do believe personally there's legal consequences and ultimately unintended consequences as they move forward. I do think keeping a key eye on how it'll affect private business owners is probably one of the top priorities in that circumstance. In relation to the mixed zoning, it's been mentioned, I do welcome the new opportunities, the new challenge that council has moved forward with the zoning ideas. Again, I'd like to leave it ultimately up to the marketplace in terms of moving forward for that.
Okay, and so next, let's cycle over to our large candidates. I'm kind of guessing at this point. I'm trying to keep it all in columns and make sure that each time we finish a question, I've started a new column with a new order for the presentation. So, at-large members, you ready to take this on? Okay, Mr. Type.
I work for a company in Waterloo, and I'm actually proud to say that we are a second chance employer. In fact, some of our best employees are former that have criminal records. I think there's real momentum to move beyond ban the box and actual great employers, you know, through discussions in the Inclusion Summit. We have a very vibrant community. I think this is going to be a thing of the past, and we're going to evaluate people for their skills and their attributes and not that box. So I think that this is going to solve itself. In Cedar Falls, though, in terms of attracting a more diverse community, I think we do have a problem. We updated our comp plan, which hadn't been done for, I believe, 30 years. We updated it in 2013. That sets the stage for how you can zone next. And the zoning code that we have today really forces developers into kind of an R1 mindset that's one-third lot sizes, 250 plus $1,000 homes. With better comp plan, which is in place, and zoning, which allows you what you can do in those areas, I think we're going to solve this problem. We're going to have more socioeconomic options for housing developments versus the homogeny that we see throughout much of Cedar Falls. So you're going to see more mixed-use housing, mixed developments, and apartment structures. What we're dealing with that in many different ways. But yes, form-based zoning is actually a very, very promising element because it allows greater flexibility for developers. And it also destroys some of those built-in systematic repression that's in our current code. And I think we have to recognize that.
Thank you. Let's go to Mr. Didier next.
I actually learned about the article from a friend out on the East Coast, and he's visited me several times. He loves Iowa. He's from Boston, so it's just absolutely crazy to think of that popping up in a national paper about Cedar Valley. And I was really saddened by it. I've also lived in Waterloo for several years. I work in Waterloo. Waterloo is a great community. They have their struggles as well too. So it is really sad that has been placed just on our entire area. We do need to work to understand what those reasons are. I think both communities are doing a lot to try to understand that. We need to continue to expand upon that. But really, it's not necessarily going to be a government effort, but a community effort. It's going to take everybody's help, all the residents understanding and moving forward, becoming welcoming within both communities. On the ban the box issue, people make mistakes. I mean, I've made mistakes. I'm sure many of you have, that you look back and go, I wish I really hadn't done that. Everybody deserves a second chance. Everybody deserves a third chance. From a businessman perspective, I can understand a concern with not having that up front so that they know in advance. Last year I was part of a hiring event out at Omega, and a gentleman came down and sat across the table from me, and he told me straight away, goes, I just want you to know I got out of jail X amount of time ago, hadn't been that long. He goes, I'm trying to get my life back together. I have a grandchild. I'm just trying to move forward. He goes, and I just want you to know up front. And that was extremely powerful to me. For one, for him to be able to tell that to somebody he doesn't even know, I mean, that was huge. It stopped me in my tracks. And it immediately made me feel that this person does want to do better with their life, and I would love to have him on board my team. The businesses still have the ability to conduct background checks, so they still have that. But again, this is an issue that, like I said, Waterloo is still discussing. They don't have all the answers. I think it's going to take a lot more than just a bunch of opinions and some studies to really understand that. It's going to be a community effort.
Thank you, Mr. Simon.
Yes, the ban the box. I'm in favor of banning that. I myself, when I was in the concrete business, I hired guys that had just come out of prison. They were hard workers. They were glad to have a second chance. Everything worked out good. They went on, moved on with their lives, became very productive. People, they tend to live where they would like. For 2.5 years, I was on dialysis, and there was 3 of us who sat together. And the one fellow lived in Waterloo, and we got to be tremendous great friends. And I've always bragged up Cedar Falls. Wherever I go, I love Cedar Falls, and I'm glad to share it with anyone who wants to come here and live. And after he and I spending 2.5 years together, and him being positively from Waterloo all his life, after 2.5 years, now he lives in Cedar Falls. And I'm very glad to have him here. But I love Cedar Falls, and I love to share it with everybody.
Let's see. So, right. Which group is next? Raise your hand. Let's go down here to Ward 4. Ward 2. Whatever. Where? Okay.
Ward 2.
All right. Ward 2. Have at it.
This is actually an extremely difficult question for me. Living in Cedar Falls my entire life. Going to Cedar Falls High School, for example. Like my buddies and I always kind of talked about this throughout high school. How about high school is so culturally diverse, but you have 6 African Americans in the whole school, and they're all on the football team, as an example. So I'll do anything possible to have people more welcome here. And I've been walking around my neighborhood, for example, and there's a small Hispanic community as well that feel like they're being left out. And he said if there's city council members that support his Hispanic group, he will 100% back me. And I don't exactly know why he doesn't feel comfortable speaking out or voicing his opinion, but I would like to be a voice for everybody and have everyone be welcome here and attract more culturally diverse groups, whether that's through rezoning or whatnot. I'd like to get out there and explore those options, and I am for banning the box as well and giving people a second chance.
Thank you. This is the work.
Wow, this has been covered by so many people, it's hard to come up with something different to say. Mayor Brown and Tom Blanford really covered it quite well. The only thing I guess I would add would be, as a representative of Ward 2, I'd like to hear from the public regarding Ward 2 on what they would like regarding the zoning the bandbox issues to make my decision on that.
Okay. Did we finish that question now? Oh, good. Okay. If you were watching me in the last couple of moments, you might have noticed I put several slips of paper on the table since they all relate to one question. And I know that it's important, and it's been a it's really engaged the citizenry for quite a while. So I'll attempt to just generalize that question, and it comes down to the matter of public safety officers, professional firefighters. And one questioner noted that there was recently a case where if Waterloo firefighters and EMTs had not been called to an accident scene, the driver could have had their foot amputated. But the arrival of the Waterloo people, and I'm not trying to prejudice this, I'm just trying to focus this question because it comes down to a question of safety, and it comes down to a question of costs and savings. Pardon me if I mischaracterized it, but that seems to be the focus of these five questioners. Is the change toward a PSO model justified by costs, by performance, and what should be the future direction and future attention paid to firefighters, public safety, and police? Cost, benefit, long-term pensions, it's all there. So I'm going to save this one for last. After this round of answers, we'll go to our final statements. And so, Mr. Tiber, if we could start.
I'm not going to comment on the accident scene. I just don't think that's appropriate. I think both cities work together to address that incident, and I think enough has been said on that. In terms of the public safety program, in 2014, when we deployed it, I absolutely believed in it. It was a better use of resources. Put more police officers, more PSOs, feet on the street, and firefighters were supposed to be part of this program as well. They were supposed to be in the station being the trainers and the mentors to the PSOs. So what we were able to do was extend capability for the same cost. Okay, so we actually have a net gain of police officers and a net gain of qualified firefighters. There have been a lot of debates about whether or not their professional training is professional enough, and I think you kind of have to trust that our professionals, our police and fire chief and public safety director, are working in our best interest. That is, after all, their job. I truly do feel if this program is not going to work, it's not because of the program design, but it's because of the labor issue. Firefighters, since day one, admittedly, have been against this program. And when your labor group isn't aligned with the company goal, or in this case, the city goal, bad things are happening. And so what do I want to do? I want to resolve this issue. We've got to resolve it. Interest-based negotiation, bring people back to the table, understand what the real concerns are and issues, and resolve them, and realize that everybody's going to compromise in this moment.
I believe this is a very simple solution. We want a tough police department, and we want an experienced fire department. End of story. We want two separate departments. This town has enough money to do that. The only time PSO programs work is when the towns were under 10,000 people. This town needs a strong police department and a very experienced fire department. I'm ashamed when our people show up and then step back for another department. In my life, and being an expert in a couple of different things, I couldn't imagine stepping aside if that was my chosen profession and letting somebody else jump in there. I've said it before. I'm trained in CPR and the defibrillator machine, but I want a doctor to work on you. I'll do the best I can, but we deserve to have those two things. It's truly, though, not just a one-item campaign for me. We also need to keep our wastewater plant. We're not going to be held hostage by Waterloo or any centralized wastewater conglomerate that they think they're going to make. We have I&I, which is infiltration and inflow, and they're just going to gouge us, and we need to have our own wastewater. But as far as the fire department, I want a good, experienced fire department with now guys my age, believe it or not, old guys who really know what they're doing so they can train the young guys and bring them up just like it's always been. It was that way when I was a kid here in this town. We all lived here together. We all love Cedar Falls. And that's one of my big things. I will have a strong police department, and I will have an experienced fire department.
Thank you. Mr. Didier.
The PSO program in its inception is something to support and implement, supplement a traditional fire department. I think where we've gone wrong is that if a firefighter leaves, he is replaced with a cross-trained PSO and not another firefighter. I don't believe it's a union issue, because in the union's official statement from the Teamsters, they said that they fully support the program of supplementing the firefighters, traditional firefighters. The biggest problem I find with the whole issue is not necessarily about the program and its merits. It's more about the transparency that's happened from its inception. Incorrect data put out, falsified information, or not necessarily falsified, but just kind of skewed to
supported is justified in both cost and performance. If I did not believe in this program, I would not advocate for it. My sons and my grandchildren live here, and I want what's best for everyone. I do feel that our public safety officers have been unfairly criticized throughout this election with a lot of incorrect information. They are great people. I want to end this by saying we have high-quality police officers, high-quality firefighters, and high-quality public safety officers, and I simply want to thank each and every one of them for their service to our community.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. And Derek Rogers. Mr. Rogers.
Obviously, you guys know where I stand on this issue. I was inspired to run for city council because of the PSO program. And obviously, the PSO program is not where it ends. It's just where it starts for me. It just comes down to, you know, if the city's gonna tell us certain things and not be transparent about this program, what are they not telling us about in other programs? And it is true, like there's a lot of things that we're not being told about. You know, PSO officers are paid $58,000 compared to a $45,000 highly skilled firefighter who has a lot more training, better training, and not to mention the $2 million more a year is costing the city and the $11 million PSO building that we put on South Main. So there's a lot of issues that we are faced with here, and it just comes down to what do the citizens want? Like, what do you guys want? And this election is going to come down to if you want either or. I mean, you can have a police assist, but if you want them to replace it, the firefighters, that's what you're going to get with this election. So vote for me. You'll have a separate fire department and a separate police department.
Thank you. Mr. Brown.
It's been said a couple times the PSO model was to supplement firefighters and not replace firefighters. I just want to say that these folks saying that are absolutely correct. It was to supplement. But don't kid yourself, the Cedar Falls Firefighter Union leader who's from Janesville was adamantly opposed to even that supplementation a year and a half ago. But remember what happened. We had 12 firefighters leave under the false assumption that we weren't safe. So let's go back in time. We had to replace these folks that left. Well, what if we just found a person in the surrounding community, volunteer firefighter for 15 years, certified to train those volunteer firefighters, has more certifications than anyone working in our fire department currently. He's Firefighter 2 certified and has a college degree. Should we hire him? We did. His name is Tim Smith. A good man and someone who didn't deserve a stupid post on social media trying to assassinate his character earlier this week. Shame on those folks who posted that. So let's keep looking for folks to replace those 11 now. Maybe we find another person that was a traditional firefighter out of state for 5 years, certified, qualified, Firefighter 2, college degree. Should we hire that person off the street? We did. Now he's a full-time firefighter in Cedar Falls. See what's going on here? We moved the public safety officers assigned to police to now be assigned to full-time fire department. They work 24-hour shifts. They're trained, certified, and more than capable to do all the things any firefighter would do. And that's the cost savings. I'll leave you with this, and this is what we as elected officials have been dealing with the past 12 to 18 months. Those folks who replaced the ones that left are not IAFF union members. They're Teamster unions. And there's the rub.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Green.
So the idea with the original question was, do you support a public safety model? And it's such a massive question. It's much bigger than saying, do you want to have police officers certified as firefighters? It's more than having public safety officers in 24-hour shifts. It's such a complex question that you have to really break it down to individual parts, and that's the only way to understand it. And be careful with candidates and who you're voting for to find out where they stand on particular aspects of the model. One of the biggest problems that I've had with council and with trying to get my arms around this is the plan that is in existence today, or the model is in existence today, isn't what Councilor Tiber, within Councilor Tiber, had approved in 2014. It has changed. When I ran for council in 2017, I sat with the public safety director, and he told me that the police officers, or the new public safety officers, are going to augment the firefighters, not replace them. And then I find out in the Courier that they've replaced the firefighters. So I have huge concerns about how this plan is being implemented. And that's, I know I sound like a broken record, but it's why I keep requesting, and why as mayor, I'm going to advocate for a public safety strategic plan. We can go back and document the original reasons why this plan was put into existence, whether those reasons still exist today, and then to see what we want this program to look like in the years ahead. We do not have that. It's a glaring issue that has to be addressed, and we regularly commission strategic plans for public operations like the public library, the Hearst Center. It astounds me we've not done so for one of the most crucial aspects of the government.
Thank you, Mr. Skeen.
The issue is cross-training. Even the greatest athletes have difficulty in working effectively in a second sport. You take any Major League Baseball player, they would not necessarily be effective NBA players. It's a matter of confidence. And if a person is trained as a police officer and then picks up as a second element firefighting, he's not as good as firefighting as he is as a police officer. And that's why in this particular situation, the DSO model is a disaster. And should be immediately replaced. And there should only be a fire department and a police department, and I would add, and no public safety director. There's no need for it. And so in this particular issue, in this particular process, the sooner that we can divide the departments and then begin to hire professional firefighters. Now, as a temporary measure, we may find some of those cross-trained individuals would like to be with the fire unit as opposed to the police unit, and as a result of that, they can work hard to become fully professional firefighters. When they put them over, they're not. So, no public safety officer.
Thank you, Mr. Skinner. Next, let's hear from our Ward 4 council candidates. Let's start with Mr. Perry.
So obviously this is one of the major issues, if not the major issue, almost every person in this room and or voter out there. I firmly believe that we should have a separate fire department and a separate police department, but I do believe cross-training is good. Sometimes stuff happens. You know, when we have a large event that we maybe need some more police officers, and that cross-training can work. When we have a 3-alarm fire, of course we want to have more people that can help. But again, it still comes down to me always to specialization. What is the difference? I brought this up before. I'm certified to change it. I can change 4 colors, no problem. This takes me an hour and a half. You know, the people that work for me can do it in 20 minutes, right? You know, it's still done. If you want to have people that are experts in their field to be the primary people that do anything, and then again, cross-training is beneficial. But when we look at stuff about, is it supposed to be cheaper, and yet it's $2 million more. We've heard a lot of people talk about how we're getting more boots on the ground. Then why are we outsourcing sheriffs? It doesn't seem to mesh with me. If we have more people, then we don't need to bring in other people. If it's supposed to be cheaper, then we would be saving money, not spending money.
Thank you. So Mr. Harding.
All right, this is a two-part answer for me because it has to do with program and policy. So how do we quantify safety, right? Is it the number of PSOs we have? Is it the statistics, our ISO rating? Or is it experience working as a team to save your life? Firefighters live, train, eat, and sleep together. They're a family. They are willing to run into a burning building to save your life. It's a circle from most experienced firefighters all the way to least experienced, and it keeps rotating, okay? Well, in Cedar Falls, we've broken that circle. On Monday, at the council meeting, they talked about 24% budget increase, and then they explained it away somewhat with inflation, union negotiations, and hiring ahead. I'm okay with that. That's fine. We're still at 6 to 8 to 11% increase with 200 plus years of lost experience on the fire side. So now we have an increased public safety budget for 200 plus years less experience. Why? That's the point. Second part, policy. Lack of transparency. The policy was meant to be supplemental. Now all of a sudden, fast forward, it's morphed behind the scenes and the citizens have had no say, and now it's full integration instead of partial integration. They can't do that. Mismanagement of personnel, and then a refusal of public forum and communication to work this out. So now the government has alienated the citizens and they don't feel like they're being heard. So we need to get back to listening, talking, communicating. We need to put a 3 to 5 year plan in place to get separate fire and police. And we need to move forward and utilize what we have to the best of our ability.
Thank you. And finally, Mr. Blanchard.
Thank you. For those with questions on the Green Hill Road accident, I would encourage you to watch the video from Monday night's council meeting. That issue was discussed at length, and I think most of your questions can be answered there. So that's on the city's website. Regarding the public safety officer program, I think there's a couple of questions that get brought up here that we don't answer. If you're talking or you're advocating for splitting the departments back into two and substantively increasing hiring, what's your plan to pay for it? And that question I think has not been answered. I'll be honest, when I first got on council, I had questions about the program. I really wasn't sure it was the best way for us to go. But as I've met these officers, as I've seen them in training, as I've seen them in action protecting this community, I am certain that this program makes us safer. By any objective measure, this program makes us safer. And as I talked about earlier, I've lived here my entire life. My business is here, my family is here, my new niece Lily is here. If there was one piece of evidence that said that she was less safer, I can guarantee you I would vote against this program. There just isn't. I am confident that this program keeps us safe, that it's more cost effective, and that it sets us up for success in the long term. And that's really the key to this program. It's not that it's implemented on Monday and by Tuesday it's done, it's ready to go. It's that this is a long-term investment. It's going to require participation from the employees, from management, from the residents, but it is a long-term strategy to keep us safer and to protect both our physical security and our economic security.
Thank you, Mr. Blanford. And I thank you all 11 of you, for coming here, and for all of you to come and pose questions and get a better knowledge of the people who want to serve us in our city government. Now, the good folks from the League of Women Voters who are sponsoring this, thank you also, have asked, please, let's make this a 1-minute statement. So so that we can get out of here in a reasonably timely manner. And so if you've already set your hopes on 2 last minutes, let's see if we can do it in a minute apiece. Remember that the basic challenge was, what is another significant long-term challenge facing the city of Cedar Falls, and what skills and leadership and experience do you bring to help us solving that challenge? So let us begin with work in reverse. One last time, let's start with the 4th Ward candidates, and let's start with Mr. Bland.
Thank you. I would say one of the most crucial challenges facing us right now is the ongoing pressure to the public budget, whether it's the 411 pension system, the backfill that we talked about, multi-residential rollback, which is going to continue to adversely affect us, metropolitan transit, water quality. We're going to continue to have significant pressure on our public budget. Cedar Falls is in a sound financial position today. That's because of 20 years of sound investments and long-term planning. To keep that positive position, we have to change how we do business. Whether it's identifying efficiencies, creating new public-private partnerships, advocating for our city at the state and federal level, it's going to continue to be a challenge, and it's going to take all of us working together. As the youngest person on council and on the stage, I feel I bring a unique perspective. I think my experience in the financial industry is helpful, and I believe I have some significant knowledge that will help us meet that challenge for the next 20 years.
Thank you. Mr. Perryman.
The biggest challenge, I believe, going forward is reestablishing public trust. There's been a variety of different issues. PSO is one of them. That when you go out and talk to people, you're not getting this huge sense of, oh yeah, I trust the way my government is speaking to me and the direction that they're going. I want to make sure that we have more transparency and more open forums, and I want them to be at different times. You got to have them with different people, regardless of their work schedule, who tend to participate. If you've got people that are working right now, they can't come. Okay. I also want to make sure we're addressing other issues, such as property rights. Like, people want to be able to have chickens; they should be able to have chickens. They want to be able to have their own driveway, whichever driveway they choose. It should be mandated by the government how you have to do that, especially when the rules don't apply to everybody equally. And that's another issue that we get into. It's making sure that everyone gets a fair shake and not specific people get special treatment over others.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. Mr. Harding.
Citizen government relations and communication is what I really want to focus on. With the lack of transparency and improper policy implementation, some mismanagement of personnel, and non-communication, government has alienated the citizens somewhat. So I want to go back to the core values of my campaign. I want to listen. I want to have ward meetings 3 to 4 times a year. I want to have more open forums. I want to get agendas out earlier so that the representatives can hear what the citizens have to say, not just 48 hours before. I want to make sure we amend and change the public forum aspect of the council meetings so it's more of a dialogue and the citizens can participate and talk. The more we communicate and the more we learn from each other, the better this city's going to be.
Thank you. And Mrs. DeBoer.
Cedar Falls has issues with flood and stormwater issues, retirements of long-term staff, state and federal unfunded mandates, false information and misinformation on social media, parking challenges, outflow of our young adults, infrastructure. Infrastructure to me is the most crucial. We have aging sewer and water lines, bridges that need replacement, and roadways deteriorating. We resolve this issue by staying vigilant to our pavement management program. Our engineers survey the roads and the systems throughout town, prioritizing the condition to make a 5-year plan for reconstruction or reconditioning. Replacing the sewer and water lines is also done when reconstructed. This makes the need based on priority rather than politicizing it. The local option sales tax has been critical to keeping up to date with our infrastructure needs, and we cannot thank the citizens enough for continuing the local option sales tax.
Thank you. And Mr. Rogers.
The most crucial problem I see facing Cedar Falls is the lack of transparency, allowing citizens to have a voice in major issues with such developments, parking, obviously the PSO program, and proper policy implementation. If elected, no facts will be skewed. It will be a combination of both sides of each particular issue with facts supporting And as my job on city council isn't to have my own opinions, it's to listen to everyone and make a decision based on the facts. Whether we need to have more meetings outside of city council, for more involvement from the public, having more efficient processes and less closed door meetings outside of city council. And the other concern I have is to do the general fund. I feel we should be more involved in the decision-making process, where that money goes and exactly how much money is taken out of our taxes each year. I'd rather have that money spent be allocated towards other programs, schools and infrastructure, for example.
Thank you. Okay. So let's go next to Mr. Tiber.
What is the greatest problem facing Cedar Falls? False narratives. False narratives. And I'll just mention a couple. Public safety. Okay, and I've heard just awful distortion of facts. There's gaslighting going all around. We are a safer community today because of public safety. Number two, safety. I hear that the Hill is an unsafe place, but crime is down in Cedar Falls, over 20% over the last decade. The Hill is not a bastion of crime. I mean, go up there. It's vibrant with people and new business. Transparency. When I joined council in 2010, we didn't even publish a council packet online. Today we do, and within 3 months we did. That's one example. Another one is the broadcasting of committee meetings. We have the digitization of currents and all the communication tools that we have. We are a great city today. We're a great city. We can't be distracted by false narratives. We need to move our city forward and believe in the future.
Okay, Mr. Sayers.
I believe what we need is to bring peace and harmony back to Cedar Falls. This is the best community. I love Cedar Falls, and I will have town hall meetings where we can all get together. My specialties are in wastewater. We're going to have an upcoming project with our wastewater plant. Some people want to get rid of it. That's one area where just last week I was doing 20 hours of continuing education. I was looking to where we could fund our new plant and do those sorts of things. Also, I was in Beckley. I was out east and was at a 20 million gallon plant per day out there. And they had just updated that. It was absolutely beautiful, dumped into a trout stream. Those are my kind of expertise. Cedar Falls will always be a great place. We can argue about crime statistics, but the one thing I do want to leave you with is the college campus crime statistics are not included in Cedar Falls crime statistics, and I think that's wrong. So let's keep this the vibrant, great place that we all love, and let's bring back peace and harmony. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Diddy.
Most crucial problem that we face right now is the lack of integrity and unethical use of power by the mayor, council members, and certain city staff. In the HBO series Chernobyl, there's a quote that says, "When the truth offends, we lie and lie until we forget that the lie is there, but it is still there. Every lie we tell incurs a debt to the truth. Sooner or later, that debt needs to be paid. And that payment's coming due November 5th. For instance, Public Safety Director was blatantly omitting the use of sheriff deputies to support a police force that he states has been staffed greater than it has ever been. Then saying PSOs are burnt out, which in turn means that we are also losing a potential firefighter on that shift. And when the approval of Public Works Director Chase Schrage reached council, Mr. Schrage had already been given the position weeks earlier, and the council was asked to rubber stamp that. Only one member of council said that we need to make that effective date at that council meeting, and the council remained silent. This current council does not work for you, the people, it works for the city. To right these wrongs, we need to first vote out the incumbents. Second, as residents, we need to hold our officials accountable for their actions and demand transparency. And lastly, we need to put measures in place to ensure that all residents and city employees will never be silenced again."
Thank you, Mr. Diddy. Final three candidates. Let's begin with Mr. Skate.
The most crucial problem is the Cedar Falls city government. Our democracy says that government should be of, by, and for the people. For the last 5 years, the government has functioned to the benefit of the few and to the disadvantage of the many. There are many examples of this. I'll just give you one. One is where the people wanted to have fire station 2 reopened, and the city built the public safety building 7 miles away. At the cost of University Avenue came to $40 million, and the city has been built with funds.
Thank you, Mr. Skate, Mr. Green.
Our most crucial problem is the lack of public confidence in city government. This will impact how well we resolve other civic challenges, like the future of public safety, the coming overhaul of our zoning ordinances, and how we foster community growth while still retaining the essential character of Cedar Falls. How can this be resolved? For starters, a strategic plan for public safety, facilitated by an experienced consulting firm, a plan which has been publicly vetted and approved by council, a plan based on a frank and unbiased audit of our public safety program, informed by an understanding of what residents expect for the future. This plan is essential for moving forward. Second, as mayor, I'll appoint planning and zoning commission members who reflect the community as a whole, not developers. Stacking the deck heavily in favor of development leads to the appearance of conflicts of interest and doesn't foster trust in the city's decision-making process. In short, it does more harm than good. Restoring trust simply means scrupulously following the principles of good governance, and I pledge to do just that.
Thank you. And we're about to hear from our last speaker, but I want to remind you that the last word belongs to all of you. And you will utter that final word for all of these individuals on November 6th. So again, thank you for coming to be November 5th. Sorry, November 5th. It's a hard job up here with 11 of you. But anyway, Mr. Brown.
I believe the biggest challenge is to sustain the kind of growth we've seen the past 4 to 6 years while also keeping the city safe and the budget in order. We're one of the lowest tax cities in the state. We have a balanced budget. Our property valuations have gone up. Our property taxes have gone down. An envy of Iowa. We've had amazing growth in housing, industrial, commercial, and high-tech business. I'm proud of the track record that we've seen through all of our economic corridors. I look forward to continuing that effort by doing basically what we've done. I know my opponent and others on the stage are concerned with hypergrowth. I don't even know what that means. Mr. Green had a track record of voting on economic development. He was no on the public safety building. He wanted to bond for it instead of paying cash. That would have cost the taxpayers an extra $3 million. Fairway? No. Quickstar? No. And the housing development on the Hill, close to you and I? No. I don't know the opposite of hypergrowth, but it's a reflection of this type of growth. I don't think Cedar Falls is ready for that. I will continue to work with our partners towards growth and an even bigger emphasis towards the high-tech sector. It's been an honor to serve this great city. I'm asking your vote November 5th. Thank you.
No, I'm sorry. That is the final statement. As Shakespeare said, our revels are now at an end, and thank you again for coming.
Yes, it's true.